You're watching Eye on Africa here on France 24. I'm Julia Kim. These are the headlines on the continent. South Africa will reopen its borders to most countries next month. The move is part of a wider easing of coronavirus restrictions as cases fall dramatically in the country. A spectacular fall from grace for the former head of World Athletics governing body. A Paris court sentences Senegal's Lamine Diack to 2 years in jail for corruption. And from Cafe Jimi to the Hendrix Inn, hotels and cafes in a Moroccan village bear Jimi Hendrix's name. But did the rock star really go there, or is it just an urban legend? We'll tell you more later on in the programme. But first, South Africa will reopen its borders to most countries from October the 1st. In an address to the nation, President Cyril Ramaphosa said the country had succeeded in overcoming the worst. However, he said travel may be restricted from some countries with high infection rates. The announcement comes amid a dramatic decline in coronavirus cases. Restrictions on movements and businesses have been gradually eased since June, but borders stayed sealed to avoid importing the virus from abroad. France 24's MZ Ferreira has the latest from Cape Town.
Well, the crucial news really to come out of today's cabinet meeting and tonight's announcement by the president was that international travel can resume next month. South Africa's been closed for tourists for 6 months, and this has had a devastating impact not only on that sector but on the economy as a whole. But it won't quite be business as usual when flights start landing again from the 1st of October. Everybody coming into South Africa will have to present a COVID-19 negative test result that's no older than 3 days. Those who land without it will immediately be quarantined at their own cost. And foreign travelers will only be allowed to enter the country at the 3 international airports in Durban, Cape Town, and Johannesburg, and only at certain land borders. And this is obviously to restrict arrivals to areas that can cope with mass screening, because everybody will be screened on arrival, and those who present with symptoms will also immediately be quarantined. Now, the president said tonight that South Africa's foreign missions will start receiving applications for visas and long-term visas will be reinstated. But he warned that countries with high rates of COVID-19 or those that are in the throes of a second wave will be excluded as per announcement to follow.
Now, the number of COVID-19 cases is shrinking, but so is the country's economy. What are the chances of a swift recovery in South Africa?
I don't think anybody is realistically hopeful of a swift recovery. The president said tonight that though most restrictions on economic activity will now be lifted with the move to level 1, that many sectors will not be operating at full capacity for some time to come. The economy was, of course, in recession before the pandemic, and we know now that in the second quarter, during the hard lockdown, the GDP contracted by 51% on an annualized basis. That's the biggest contraction since 1960. And we don't know yet the full cost in terms of job losses, but unemployment was at around 30% even before the health crisis. Ramaphosa said tonight that the government has so far paid out 42 billion rand in wage support, and he announced that these benefits will continue for as long as the country is in a state of national disaster.
Now, Libya's internationally recognized Prime Minister has announced he intends to step down by the end of October. Fayez al-Sarraj says he wants to hand over power to a new administration amid talks on ending the country's conflict. Sarraj has led the Tripoli-based government of national accord since its formation in 2015. The east and the south of the country is currently controlled by a rival administration. Sarraj's announcement also comes after mass rallies erupted in August in Tripoli and other cities over corruption and poor services. Now, the former head of the World Athletics governing body, the IAAF, Senegal's Lamine Diack, has been sentenced to 2 years in jail for corruption. A Paris court found that he'd covered up Russian doping cases in exchange for millions of dollars in bribes. He's also guilty of accepting Russian money to help finance Senegalese President Macky Sall's 2012 campaign. President Peter O'Brien has more.
After a sprawling investigation over the course of 5 years, the court in Paris has spoken. 87-year-old Lamine Diack, the former boss of the global athletics body IAAF, has been found guilty of corruption and breach of trust. It's 4 years in prison, 2 of which suspended. Diack's lawyers say they will appeal.
Cette décision est une décision qui est injuste, inhumaine. Elle est injuste parce qu'on voit que le tribunal a cherché à faire dans le politiquement correct, a voulu se servir de M. Diack comme étant un bouc émissaire.
The judge said that during his 16-year tenure as head of the IAAF, the Senegalese sports administrator was part of a scheme that allowed Russian athletes to pay large amounts of hush money to keep competing when they should have been suspended for doping. The court also handed a guilty verdict to Diack's son, Papa Massata Diack, who embezzled funds while he was a marketing consultant for the IAAF. He's been sentenced to 5 years prison in absentia, but he lives in Senegal, which has refused to extradite him.
Nous sommes innocents. Je suis innocent des faits et des accusations. Aucune preuve tangible et irréfutable ne peut m'être opposée.
Lamine Diack was also found guilty of accepting Russian money to help finance Macky Sall's 2012 presidential campaign in Senegal. And there's still more to investigate. Both father and son are suspected of corruption in the awarding of the 2020 Olympic Games to Tokyo and the 2016 Games to Rio de Janeiro.
Well, in other news, Sudan has appealed for more aid as it grapples with the impact of catastrophic floods. The flooding has killed over 100 people and left hundreds of thousands homeless. Heavy rains usually fall from June to October, but this year the Blue Nile rose to its highest levels in over a century. Khartoum declared a 3-month state of emergency earlier this month. Here's the Sudanese Minister of Social Development speaking earlier.
We have been hit by the worst floods in 100 years. More than 120,000 houses have been destroyed, either partially or fully. We're talking about more than 650,000 people affected in different parts of Sudan. In the 18 states of Sudan, we're looking at disastrous situations. People now are in dire need of shelter, of health, of water and sanitation. After COVID, it's had its impact on our economy, an economy in crisis already, and of course a strained medical system. It's been very tough, and I think what we need right now is better coordination.
Now, protests have broken out in the Nigerian capital of Lagos over increases in fuel and electricity costs. Petrol is up by 10%, while electricity tariffs have doubled since the government dumped a controversial fuel subsidy scheme. Well, police detained members of the Joint Action Front, a civil society group fighting against the policy. They say it will impoverish people already struggling under the impact of the pandemic. But Nigeria's president says it simply can't afford the petrol subsidies anymore. Now, in the Moroccan village of Diack near Essaouira on the Atlantic coast, some elderly residents claim that Jimi Hendrix came to the site in 1969. From Café Jimi to the Hendrix Inn, hotels and cafes bear his name. But did the rock star really go there, or is it just an urban legend? Nicolas Germain went to find out.
In the streets of the village of Diack in western Morocco, locals hang up pictures of Jimi Hendrix. The legendary guitarist reportedly came here in 1969. Those who have lived in Diack for decades say they remember seeing him.
جيمي هندريكس شفتو قلت لك مرة أو جوج. اللي شفتو هنا ما هضرت معاه ما والو لأنه هو تيدوي الإنجليزية حنا ما عرفناش شي يقول وجا لهنا وزار ديابات خربواتاي وكذا إلى آخره. هذيك فواحد الفترة فوت واحد المدة عاوتاني عاود بان هنا ونقول لك نهار ولا جوج هذاك الشوف اللي بيننا وبينه.
There are no photographs of Hendrix's visit to Diack, but many hotels and cafes have been named after him.
جيمي هندريكس قلت لك فاش كان في الصويره في 1968 فهمتيني على ما عاودوا داز هنا في الديابات مع كان ديك الساعه واحد هذيك الموجه ديال لا موفمون اي بي فيها واحد جات للصويره فوق واحد 60,000 ولا 70,000 ديال الكوار من كل جنس من فنانه اطباء كتاب فنانات تشكيليين.
Some of Hendrix's biographers say he definitely went to the nearby city of Essaouira, but they doubt he visited Diack. And yet here the myth lives on. What is undeniable, according to Hendrix specialists, is that Gnawa, a Moroccan musical style, influenced some of the great guitarist's songs.
Well, that's it from us. There's more news coming up. Stay tuned to France 24.